now the next tentacle of the conspiracy I want to talk about is the Buckshot Caucus. So we ask ourselves, right, what's more dangerous? We have these wolves. That's pretty dangerous. I don't want to, I don't want to mess with that. These guys are pretty vicious. But then compare that to the wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, I would say that the wolf in sheep's clothing is much, much more dangerous, because those ravaging wolves you are going to avoid like the plague. But that wolf that pretends to be peaceful and pretends to be one of you and dresses like you and talks like you to get you to go along with that agenda is far more dangerous than the open wolf. And so that's why, so much we don't focus on, those pesky Democrats. Those are kind of the open wolves. It's the wolves in sheep's clothing, the ones that are pretending to talk about the Constitution, the ones pretending to talk about liberty. Those are the dangerous ones. And Carroll Quigley, who wrote Tragedy and Hope, which was one of these books that admitted, he studied their papers of the conspiracy and talked about how they implemented the conspiracy. And that the only thing he disagreed with was that they wanted to remain a secret. He says that the two parties, Republican and Democrat, should be almost identical so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy. That's why they want you fighting over, we got to get so-and-so elected, otherwise the other guy's going to get elected. Because they know that there's no difference, that both people are working for the same agenda. And so we get caught up in, maybe it's slower, maybe we're going to, no, they are working for the same. And in fact, the wolf in sheep's clothing is going to get you to go along with it much more effectively than the open wolf. So we have to diagnose the enemy. We're talking about the Buckshot Caucus. Utah Policy, it really was kind of like the insider's newspaper for where the conspiracy goes to read about what's going on. They had an article called Bacon, Guns, and the Buckshot Caucus, Who Really Runs GOP Politics in Utah? In the article, it says Utah Policy is told that members of the GOP Illuminati Buckshot Caucus are at it again in the Utah legislature. The 170-member group is made up of establishment Republican insiders, both office holders, lobbyists, among others. So it's not just people in power, like I mentioned earlier with the CFR, it's the people behind the scenes that are the puppet masters of the people that you see in the news. So they link to Illuminati on Wikipedia. They're not shy about what they're referring to. They're talking about the Bavarian Illuminati. They have their own logo in the lapel pin, which is using the Illuminati all-seeing eye. And the Buckshot, Utah Illuminati members, used to, before we did our first exposure on it, used to use that hashtag on social media, identifying each other, Utah Illuminati. So now we have Carl Downing, who's one of the founders of this organization, and he works for the Department of Workforce Services, and he's a Republican working to get Republicans elected in the state of Utah, like Governor Herbert. And on his own Facebook profile, again, before we started to expose this, he's changed this since then. He says, who knows how this blank black hand moves inside the halls of power? That article in Utah Policy ends with, who knows how this buckshot black hand moves inside the halls of power? Took out buckshot, Illuminati, black hand. What is the black hand? These conspirators, they'll try to like poo-poo it, laugh it off sometimes. But for themselves, they have two signs so that they know, the insiders know who they really are, talking amongst themselves. The Black Hand was a secret society that was actually behind the assassinations that led to World War I. And they are the direct subsidiary of the Bavarian Illuminati with its constitution based on the Illuminatis. So they call themselves the Illuminati. They refer to themselves as the Black Hand. They're telling you who they are. It's not a joke. Carl Downing, the founder, one of the co-founders of the Buckshot Caucus, says that statewide, Utah is just barely over 50% Mormon and shrinking. Salt Lake City is very Democrat and one of the gayest cities in the U.S. and proud of it. Response was, yeah, I've heard Salt Lake City isn't as Mormon as the rest of Utah. I was shocked when I heard that. Yeah, they just elected Jackie Biskupski as mayor, and she's openly gay. This Republican says it's pretty great. It's a pretty great state, and it's getting better. It's getting better because we're becoming less religious, becoming less conservative constitutionalist, and becoming more and more engaged in the sodomite supremacy agenda. Sometimes, they like to poo-poo it, but sometimes they actually say who they really are. Former party chairman of the Republican Party in Cache County says Check out the history of the original Illuminati. They were on the right side of most issues at the time. Freedom fighters. That's what they say. Now, they involved in rituals. This is a satanic conspiracy. And just like we have the Skull and Bones, there's satanic rituals. The Buckshot Caucus has their own strange rituals. At a special election where a legislator had resigned in the middle of the session, they had a special election where all of the delegates got together to vote on a new replacement. And there were 3 candidates. And they said, before we vote on this, we need to do a ceremony. We need to do a few things where we need to have this bowl. And we're going to of green M&Ms. We're going to spray paint them green. We have these flowers, roses made out of paper, and these guns wrapped in bacon. Dr. Pepper can on its, at an angle. And so they all worked to elect Cheryl Acton in District 38. What's interesting about this is that it got narrowed down to 2 candidates, and they held the election. 2 candidates, odd number of individuals voting. Can't have a tie, but it ended up in a tie. And so they flipped the coin and got their Buckshot member elected. So now we look at the kind of like an overview map structure of how the international conspiracy starts to funnel its way through the Alta Club and throughout the state of Utah to implement the internationalist agenda. You have the Alta Club, whose leaders have been part of a Vatican secret society called the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem. You have the Council on Foreign Relations that meets there every single month. Every single governor from 1883 until today has been a member of the Alta Club. Many of our U.S. senators are members of the Alta Club, as well as speak there. Salt Lake Tribune's a part of it. Salt Lake Chamber, of course. Many of our state legislators are a part of it. Envision Utah works through it. The World Trade Center, University of Utah, Skull and Bones, Zion's Bank, and of course, the Utah Illuminati. Hopefully this has shown us this principle that our freedoms are not being eroded on accident. It's not, whoops, that we have people working in secret to do evil on purpose. That we're not dealing with just the lesser of 2 evils. That we have people that are pretending to be your friend when they are really your enemy, laughing behind your back as they lead you down to destruction. And that if we don't understand this, we will continue to spin our wheels and be ineffective in our efforts to preserve lost liberty.